Imagine creating a beautiful handcrafted baby rattle that not only looks stunning but also holds a secret technique that every woodturner should master. In this video I'll show you how to turn these captivating rings that move freely all from a single piece of wood. Stick around because by the end you'll understand how to craft a keepsake that'll be cherished for generations. You can use most any straight grained hardwood. I'm using a piece of figured maple. You don't want to use spalted wood. You don't want anything with voids or knots in it that would compromise the integrity of the rings. You need a piece about 2 inches square and 5 inches long. In this case, this is a little bit wider. This is 2.5 inches and it's 10 inches long. So I'm going to go ahead and take it down, put a tenon on it, and we're going to put it in a chuck. Let's mark where I'm going to part it off. This is going to allow me to make 2 of them, so I'm going to go ahead and put a tenon on this end to go in the chuck jaws. So I've got it mounted with the tenon I turned, and I'm going to go ahead and put the tenon on the other scrap block, the waste, so I won't have to worry about that later. It'll already be done. So I'm taking my parting tool. I've already made a tenon here, and I'm parting it off. Whoa, that was exciting. Hi y'all, welcome to my shop. If you want to learn more about tips, tricks, and techniques of wood turning, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any future videos. Okay, yeah, this is very hard maple, so it got to the end and spun off. Okay, I'm going to take this down to the final dimension, close to it, of 1 3/4 inches. Okay, that's getting pretty close. I'm going to switch to a smaller tool post to easily get in here between the headstock and the tailstock and the chuck. You do a lot of small spindle work, a small tool rest is a blessing. Now this is going to put a little bit of damage here, so we're going to resolve that by going ahead and taking off just a little bit of area, the depth of that, possible depth of that damage with a parting tool. We're just going to bring it down, 1/8 of an inch or so. We'll clean that up later, but that'll be the end of our baby rattle. You're going to make more than one of these. Sometimes it helps to make a little storyboard. I've got a storyboard that has got room for 3 rings if you've got a full 5-inch blank. I wound up cutting this a little short, so we're going to only have 2 rings, which is generally plenty. And if you make a storyboard you're going to use frequently, you're going to make more than one, you might want to make it out of wood. So I'm going to measure the rings, and each end is going to be at least 1 inch. So I'm just going to use a 1/2 inch. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch spindle gouge to lay that out. So there's the end, and on this end I've got to have room to part it off. So I'm going to mark it there, and then I'm going to have room for 2 beads with plenty of clearance on each side. So there's 1 bead, so I don't forget it. And that's a bead. So this is clearance area, this is clearance area, this is clearance area. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those a little more clearly all the way around. We're going to part down to about 3/4 of an inch, which is going to leave us a little bit of room for cleanup. I'll show in a moment. I'm going to part off, so I'm going to go ahead and just part down on here just to kind of indicate where that is. Okay, there's the end of it. Okay, now let's start turning. We're going to just part down, like I say, to 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to set my my calipers to 3/4 of an inch so I can spot check it, and that'll work fine. Generally, I really prefer to use a different set of calipers for this kind of measurements. Let me get those. I find these calipers a little easier to use when the lathe's actually turning, so I'm going to set that to 3/4 of an inch, and then I'll be able to measure that. So let's go ahead and take this down with a parting tool in each of these cuts. Bring the tool rest back a little bit to allow room here. And maybe we've got to lower the tool rest just a bit. Okay. Get the speed up a little over 1,000, 1,600, somewhere in there. 12 to 1,400, 12 to 1,600 maybe. Alright, this is going to be the end of it. And leapfrog. This will be our first bead. We're going to have space there. Clear this out. This is a 3/16 inch parting tool, which is fine. It's what many of y'all might have. But actually it's probably easier if you have a 1/4 inch, or in this case a beading and parting tool for these wide, where you're just wasting wood. And we've got a little more room to go here. And we're getting close enough to, I can start rounding off. So we're going to use a spindle gouge to round over these beads and clean up that parting area. Just anchor the tool, ride the bevel, lift the hand to cuts, lift, twist, and rotate the handle. Now the inside. Clean up the inside a little bit there. And this one, bead, same thing. Whoa! Fortunately, I left this a little large, so not a problem. So can't be sloppy those entry cuts because you don't have a bevel to rub. So make sure that you're perpendicular with the bevel, and you actually slice into the wood. Now this side. I'm going to switch to a 3/8 inch gouge, be a little easier to control. Double check. Let's set this at a 1/2 inch because I want these beads to be fairly uniform. That looks good. That looks good. This may be a little bit fat. And this will be the end of it. The handle. Sort of. Babies don't know which end to hold. And now the end of it. Now we're ready to start making those beads. Sometimes using calipers while the lathe is running can be a little intimidating. I find it safer and easier to pull them off than to push it on. So I've got it set 3/4 of an inch. And there we go. And I would do the same thing over here on the other side. There we go. Now, if you've got any tool marks, feel free to use the edge of your spindle gouge, or you could use a skew laying on its side to just use it, slide, scraping, get these really fine shavings, get rid of any tool marks. It makes it a whole lot easier to sand. I like to put a little sanding lubricant of beeswax and mineral oil to keep the fine dust down. It creates a slurry and definitely protects your lungs. Okay, now we're going to fold it in thirds. I got 3 surfaces. We're going to go ahead and just clean up the tool marks. Let me turn on the dust collector. Slow the blade down a little bit when you sand them. You can always buy captive ring tools, but I find it very satisfying to make my own. I've gone through several iterations, and you'll find out more in the link above in the upper right hand corner on how to make one. You can make them out of Allen wrenches, or you can get some bar of high-speed steel, and this is the one I'm going to be using. So we're just going to come in here. We're going to start undercutting it on both sides, then we're going to do a little sanding on the underside before we free up that captive ring. Now, it is a scraper, which means the handle should be a little bit higher than the cutting edge. And we want to get it as round on the back side as it is on the front. That's where the challenge really comes in. Clear it a little bit further back. Now this side. I'm going to round off those sharp edges as we make that turn on both sides. A little bit of a sharp edge there. And next bead. Until its next bead is a little bit fatter. I need to probably take it down a little bit more. And try to get that flat spot in the back. So now that I've got the beads undercut on both sides, let's go ahead and do a little more sanding action here while we can before we free up those beads. I'm just going to get that corner in there trailing. On this side, same thing. Now the fun part, freeing up the beads. And switch it over. See the shavings it's pulling out. And there we go. We freed up the first one. Now let's do the next one. Now we'll switch around to this side. take this stem and clean it up and get it 5/8 inch, and then move these rings to one side. So let's take it down a little bit right here. I'll do that with a spindle gouge. Get it down close to 5/8 of an inch. Speed up a little bit. Slide this ring over it. Clean up the other side. The ridge there, got to clean up. Okay, let's move this over, and I've got a little bit of a gap here. I don't know if you can see that. Use the edge of this spindle gouge almost like a skew. Okay, let's sand all that up with a little 120. Now the sanding challenge is getting these little flat areas in the back of those beads, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to put in a coarse grit of sandpaper. In this case I'm going to use 180, and you can tape it on both sides with some tape. The other approach that I'm going to try is we're just going to put a little bit of dab of CA glue, and I'm going to hit this side with some accelerator, make it go a little faster. See if we can keep from getting this CA glue on our fingers and everything else. Let's put a little dab here, a little dab here, and we're just going to fold it over. Whoops, getting it on my fingers. And we're just going to hold it in place till the accelerator kicks in. And there we go. Now let's get the CA glue out of the way. So now we can take these beads and slide them over, the rings, slide them over this sandpaper, and let's do it a little bit manually before I turn the lathe on. Give myself a little bit of clearance here. Make sure that you have this, the bottom edge folded over in that direction, so whether you tape it or glue it, so it's going in the right direction, not to unfold on you when the lathe's on. Now let's do this next one. And now we can just, it's not staying in place. Let's go ahead and go back to plan B and use a little painter's tape. So, gotta cut a little thin piece of painter's tape. Lean in one direction and lean it in the other direction. Now it's time to get rid of that little bit of waste wood at the end that has the indentation in it from the live center, so we're just going to slowly sneak up on it. Alright, let's just remove the tailstock and cut off that last little nib. A little chatter because it's sticking out so far. Probably come in right here. Get rid of most of it on the end. Okay, we'll just sand that end up. Okay, with the end sanded, now it's time to part it off. We're going to part most of it off and then clean up that side with a spindle gouge before we final cut. Now I'm going to come in there with a spindle gouge. I use my detail gouge. It's got kind of a point, make it a little easier to get in there. Cut away a little of this. I'm going to use a fluted parting tool. It gives a little finer cut. And now I think I'll use a flush cut saw to finish that. Okay, now we can put that up against a belt sander or put a mandrel in here, but we'll do some final cleanup on the sanding. With parents concerned about food to safe finishes, and I'm here to tell you that no finish is going to withstand a baby teething on it. I prefer to just buff mine up real good so it has initial shine on it, and don't worry about it. First, use a little triple E. Let the rings dance a little bit. Get the shaft and the white diamond. Removes the triple E and takes it to a really fine finish down to about 12, equivalent of 1200 grit. And there we are. If you want to learn how to go about making some of these captive ring tools, I've got a complete video right here. I think you can tell from my videos that I enjoy wood turning and I really love teaching. I do lessons in my shop. If you're interested, click on my website for details. Remember, y'all stay safe. Come on back, you hear?